awareness, acknowledgement, and deep ownership. That's what acknowledgement is really deep ownership to whatever the energy is, the impact it has on yourself, the impact it has on others, right? You have to look at the shadow behaviors in your life and you have to determine what are the things that are keeping me small? What are the things that are hurting others? What are the things that are getting in the way of what I really want? And those behaviors, again, in the addictive lover side, it's all the vices. It's scrolling social media. It's masturbating and pornography. It's doing drugs. It's gambling. It's being a workaholic. On the impotent side, it's sitting there doing nothing, just kind of floating through life. David Goggins says that comfort is the enemy. I've seen it said, comfort's the poison. Nothing happens outside the comfort zone. We're going to look at today in the Ignite podcast how men, high achieving men, successful men will often plateau when they get comfortable, when it's just good enough. So we're going to break that down today and talk about how to watch that pitfall as a man and to make sure that you're not succumbing to what we call an Ignite the Groundhog's Day. So if you know anything about David Goggins or watch any of his videos on YouTube, you know his story. He was out working exterminator, overweight, finally got in shape, decided to join the Navy SEALs, and has been huge inspiration, motivation for fitness and overcoming challenges. And he is just like to the extreme. So I always look at men and people like that shift culture, shift the way people think, is like they go so far extreme to bring the culture over a little bit. So whatever you think of David Goggins, he is definitely a man that has put himself outside the comfort zone many times over to show you that you could do it for yourself. And this is one of the biggest challenges I see, you know, anything from books like Good to Great or times where you reach a little bit of success and then it's like we sit on our laurels. And I'm raising my hand here. It's like you break through just enough to feel good, to get out of pain, but then we kind of sit in that. And that actually can be the worst kind of pain there is, because in your life, when things are breaking down, you're more likely to do something about it, because if it hurts bad enough, you will change it. But if you're numb or checked out or comfortable for too long, then there's no real motivation to try to do anything bigger with your life. Or usually it'll be some kind of force that comes in that interrupts your life in a negative way, where you're like, oh, you kind of wake up. Maybe it's some traumatic event, a car accident, a family member getting sick or dying, or these moments that are hugely shaping in our life that finally wake us up. And there's absolutely an epidemic going on in our culture right now, in our world, mostly through the use of technology. And I don't like to vilify technology. You know, it is what it is. It's how it's applied. And that's true with everything in life. But definitely our access to information and the overload of that and the hypnotic state that screens and computers and televisions put our nervous system into is absolutely perpetuating this feeling of meh, energy neutral. It's often said that people today are shocked by nothing and offended by everything. And I find that to be true, because you see it, everyone has an opinion these days. I mean, everyone's always had an opinion, but now everyone has the righteousness and the right to post their opinions about anything, just to have an opinion out there and just wanting to argue and just wanting to essentially keep things energy neutral. See, the biggest threat to someone that's living comfortably is change, and change is the only constant. So those two forces are going to be working against each other. So change is absolutely, comfort is the enemy. We always need to be growing. I had a coach for a long time when I was in my chiropractic offices that would tell me, you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotten. So it is about, you talk about Tony Robbins' human needs, where the two needs of the human soul are to grow and to contribute. Those are the highest human needs, and not all people will attain those two human needs. He talks about the 6, the 4 that come before it, around constancy and safety, variety, love and connection, and significance, which are needs that you must meet all the time. And you will find a way to meet those needs, whether in a positive way or a negative way. So when you meet the 2 of those needs at a really high level, you're addicted to that. And that's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother podcast episode we can get into. What I want to focus today on, again, comfort is the enemy, David Goggins. And we are in the lover season right now. The big framework that we use at IgKnight, the King of the Four Archetypes. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you know this. And in our year-long mentorship program, we are in the season of the lover right now. And the lover is all about presence, aliveness, playfulness, joy, experiencing life, intimacy. These are all the qualities, the epitome of what we call the sacred third lover. A lover energy in you that's fully expressed as a man. Empathy, all of these types of emotion, be able to experience and express emotion in a healthy way. That's the lover energy, presence. So when this energy is out of balance, it either goes to the shadow pole of the positive, addicted lover, or the negative pole of the impotent lover. And I specifically want to speak to the negative pole. When I say impotent lover, it's just like literally that. It's like the limp dick syndrome. It's the man that's just kind of meh, no energy, energy neutral, as we call it, just very ambivalent about self-worth, and just feel like you matter, like the energy just low. Again, the opposite in contrast would be the addicted lover, which is the part of us that, vices, pornography, drugs, alcohol, gambling, social media, success, trophies, winning can also be in its shadow form. There's nothing wrong with winning, but there are men that will displace one addiction for another. So on the contrast to that is the impotent lover. And this is where energy neutrality comes in. And many men are dealing with this, where, again, we talk about it as Groundhog's Day in IgKnight, where you're living the same day over and over again. You've lost all novelty. You lost all passion. You lost all thrill of life, and getting in a monotonous day to day, whether it's going to your job, going home, being with family, and all those things should be empowering. But if they just are on repeat without any new stimulus and not any growth, then it'll essentially wither away. And you wake up a year or two or 5 or 10 years later wondering what happened to those years of your life. So as a man, this is a bit of a wake-up call, just a reminder that when we get comfortable, when things get good, I mean, you ask someone, anyone on the street, anyone in a store, you could say anything and their response is good. You don't have to say, how are you? Say, nice to see you. Good. Right? How many people, it's like they're on such autopilot, such automatons, walking around, standing around, just like dead. Their soul is dead. They barely have a pulse. And I don't mean to sound that like a judgment, but to really paint a picture that we need to wake up. And there's been a lot of waking up in our culture, especially in the last 5 years. I'm not going to get into all of the awake woke, but you're seeing, just again through information technology, where it's in a good way, we are seeing what's been going on and just like kind of coming out of that haze and seeing all traditional type structures break down so the new can be rebuilt. But if we rebuild the new with the same consciousness that built it, then there's going to be no change. I mean, that's a known quantity at this point. So how do we break out of that energy neutrality? Well, first we got to find novelty in life. We got to get our life force going. The lover energy also is about life force. It's about your primal energy. It's about your nervous system. It's how your body functions and runs and heals, and it's biology, it's physiology. So taking care of your body, your life force, changing your state, is emotional state as well, is absolutely imperative to accessing the lover energy, of breaking out of comfortable and going to a next level. That proverbial personal growth next level is about breaking out of your comfort zone, right? That's we've heard that from day one of personal growth 101. You got to get outside your comfort zone. You got to do something that you've never done to get something that you've never had. We've heard it a million times over, and it's truer than ever. So a lot of that comes down to recognizing when you've gotten comfortable, when you've allowed life to just kind of go on, where maybe in your relationship, it can feel more like your roommates than your lovers. Maybe you start sleeping in separate rooms, and then this pathway of just further and further and further apart happens till one day they're walking out the door and you're like, what happened? And then I would ask you a question, is like, when did she really leave? How long has that one foot been out the door? How many times has this come up about presence, about listening? We all have that in our relationships. How are you answering that call? How are you showing up in that way? Because these are the subtle cues that tell you to be aware so you can pivot and make changes. And like anything, the earlier you catch on to those whispers, the better you're able to make bigger changes with smaller effort. As in Ignite, we like to say, do you want to get tickled by a feather, hit by a brick, or run over by a truck? Feathers are nice. Tickling is nice. So when life tickles us, when our partner, when our family reflects back to us the same things over and over again, we as men must take responsibility for our actions, for our emotions, for the way we show up. And by the way, this does not take away any work that our partners or our families have to do, but we always must look first to ourselves because we're the one having the experience. We're the one responsible for how we experience life and what impact our behaviors are having. And the shadow lover in both its forms has huge impact. We all know the impacts of the addicted lover. We know the impacts of addiction. We know how lives can die, get ruined, and families can be broken apart over all kinds of addictions that run rampant. But also in the negative pole of the shadow, where it's just energy neutral and blah. It's just like there's nothing there. And families suffer in this way where parents just not being emotionally available for their kids not learning how to regulate their emotions. And it just goes on and on and on, and has the same, if not bigger, effects than the lover energy. So, or the shadow lover of the addicted lover. So it's really important to do some deep inquiry in your life. This is really where the work starts to come in of, well, how do I have that awareness? You say like get tickled by a feather, but what does that really mean? How do I take inventory of my life? And that's exactly what it is that you have to do. There does need to be time that's 100% committed and dedicated and devoted to looking at your life, for journaling, for contemplation, for prayer, for having a spiritual life. And we all have the same challenges of time and when to get that in, and children and schedules and obligations. And I push that back saying, if you don't take time for yourself, then you will ultimately be a burden to others. Let me say that again. If you don't take the time for yourself now, you think you're being in service, but ultimately that will cause bigger problems for others later that have to take care of you. Really get that tickle of a feather. Now, I get it, as men, we want to know that we're strong and we can provide, and all those things are absolutely imperative, and you got to keep doing those. And you also have to recognize where your boundaries are and where your limitations are. The energy neutral, the shadow lover of the impotent, is very ambivalent about self-worth and boundaries, has no boundaries, allows others to put boundaries on them. So the challenge with these shadows, or the thing to be aware of too, is like we can ping pong between the negative and the positive pole, where if we've sat in one or have a situation that really exemplifies that shadow and ultimately a shadow behavior. So like, how does it actually express itself in the world? If that gets built up to a point, you swing that pendulum into the other side where you can do something equally as damaging, equally as dangerous, just with a different flair. So getting to know your shadow behaviors, getting to know the triggers that cause those to go on is probably the most important thing in the awareness process. Like before you start something like new that you haven't done, you have to be able to eliminate the bad behaviors first, right? You have to have, as one of the men in our group called it recently, you have to have this trigger awareness. Like you have to know when those trigger control, like when your triggers are going to get flared, like you're going into a situation maybe with family where you know like there's going to be things that come up and you are able to anticipate it. So when it does show up, you can be like, oh, I see you over there, and not react and get angry or shut down, which is often the case with men. So if you can prepare yourself emotionally, energetically, mental focus, knowing that you're going to have to navigate a certain situation and don't allow it. And the reality is, when you get triggered by something, it's because that energy still lives in you. If that energy has been resolved or reconciled, then it won't attach to you. So when there's a person that really triggers you, or a situation that comes up that always triggers you, like that is your trigger. That is your piece to pay attention to and say, what about this is triggering? What in me is unresolved related to this? And that's where ownership, radical ownership comes in. It's not taking blame, but in any situation you're experiencing in life, you absolutely have to ask the question, like, what's my role in this? What's my part in this? What piece of this can I own? Because the truth is, that's the only part you can actually control. You can't control others. You can't control what people are going to say about you. You can't control other people's behaviors. So only thing you can control is what you're going to do and how you're going to choose to respond as opposed to react to whatever is going on. And the more you can anticipate that, the more you can have certain expectations, you can manage those triggers, trigger management. That's what it comes down to. Being able to have emotional intelligence, listen for the subtle cues of life. And this is such an important skill set for any man, any high achieving man. It's to have this sixth sense, this, we call it the magician energy and ignite, where it's like you can tap into the field. You can come into a room and read the room. You can read a group of people. You can determine. That's becoming so much more important, especially as artificial intelligence is becoming more and more a part of our everyday life, where the distinguishment between what's real and what's artificial is going to be so hard, and that technology is just going to get better and better, that our level of discernment as men, as kings, as warriors needs to be like on point to protect our family, to provide, to make sure that those within our sphere are taken care of. We have to have that ability. So again, you ask the question of like, how do I become aware of these things so they don't take over my life? Again, we're talking about comfort, right? Comfort is the enemy in the sense that it's like the boiling frog, where you just don't even notice it until you've been swallowed up by it, right? Comfort is that way. It's distraction. Viktor Frankl says most men without meaning will distract themselves with pleasure. We need meaning as men. We need purpose. We need vision. We need mission. We need to be challenged. We need to be growing, right? Back to the 6 human needs. Like, as a man, you must be growing. If you're not, you're going to get complacent. You're going to get ambivalent. You're going to be the impotent lover. You're going to be a coward. So you're going to be a weakling. Your shadows are going to flare at these times. So this inquiry of like knowing yourself, it just comes down to knowing yourself. And there's so many models and so many lenses that you can use to do analysis on yourself and to be able to categorize yourself to a point, not overly. I gotta say, when people say, well, I'm this, so that's why I'm this sign, so that means this. It's like, to a point, yes, but not as an excuse for why you do fucked up things or act fucked up ways. Labeling something doesn't mean that's who you are. So this comes down to like that awareness, acknowledgement, and deep ownership. That's what acknowledgement is really deep ownership to whatever the energy is, the impact it has on yourself, the impact it has on others, right? You have to look at the shadow behaviors in your life, and you have to determine, what are the things that are keeping me small? What are the things that are hurting others? What are the things that are getting in the way of what I really want? And those behaviors, again, in the addictive lover side, it's all the vices. It's scrolling social media. It's masturbating to pornography. It's doing drugs. It's gambling. It's being a workaholic. On the impotent side, it's sitting there doing nothing, just kind of floating through life. No real purpose, no real drive, no real work ethic, going through the motions, but feeling dead inside, feeling like the passion is just gone. Again, in a relationship, this will often show up just like roommate syndrome, or where you're just focused on the kids, but yet there's no passion, there's no intimacy, there's no connection. And I will tell you that primary connection, that primary intimacy is the source of your strength and your courage, your fire, your passion that bleeds into every other part of your life, which brings change, which gets you out of comfort, which gets you out of things being just good enough. Because when you're excited, when your intimate relationship feels amazing, you're a man on fire. Your wild man is alive. Your primal energy, your life force, your emotions, your focus, your kingly energy, your ability to shapeshift and move how you need to in the world to take care of things is just like 10 out of 10. And that takes work, that takes inquiry, that takes embodiment practices, that takes lots of things. And yes, they're all important and they must be done, because from the place of doing that, things start to flow, gravitate, all the things we talk about of synchronicity, where life seems to just have this magical energy to it. When your life hurts, when you're in pain, it's supposed to hurt because it's trying to get your attention. And if you've been beat up by life and you've been feeling, if you've experienced the same kinds of situations, maybe it's in relationship over and over again, it's like that becomes the pattern. And then that's what you normalize. And then life, that's the set point. And at some point, it either has to get bad enough or you have to give up for there to be some kind of change. And we are proponents of breaking through, going for it, taking charge of your life, being seen, getting help, finding mentorship, and doing the work that probably no one in your family has done, no one in your masculine lineage has done yet. Some of that is just generationally, our parents' generation and before, like this wasn't in the forefront. It just wasn't. There wasn't a culture of this. But now here we are because we're dealing with the fact that there wasn't for so many years. And we are that change point between our children and this future generation that is going to do amazing things with this world, and the old generation that basically got us to this point. So those of you out there that are listening that are fathers that are in your 30s and 40s, like you are the generation now raising children that are going to be that generation, those Gen Alphas and Gen Betas that are going to be using this new systems that are getting implemented now. And the prayer and the hope is that it's used to uplift humanity. Again, as I said over this course of this episode, technology is technology. It doesn't have a feeling one way or another. It's how the tool is applied. So my prayer is that the tools that are being put in now will be used to uplift humanity, and the light will always overshadow the dark, no matter how much dark there is there. And our role as men is to not get complacent, to not get compliant, to not be energy neutral, where not only do we not see what's going on in our world, but that we just sit back and allow it to happen. There's a reason testosterone rates are the lowest they've ever been amongst healthy men. There's a reason that we are distracted with so much media and consumption and processed food and chemicals and pesticides and the things that keep our life force and our energy low. So as a man listening to this, as a man in the world, is absolutely 100% your responsibility and your duty to attune your energy, to do the work, to invite in criticism, inquiry into your self-development, to get better, to grow, so that you can provide in a way that actually brings you joy, you aliveness, playfulness, presence, intimacy, awareness. That's what the lover energy is. It's who you really are when you strip away all the shadows, when you strip away all the guilt and shame, when you strip away all the conditioning. Your natural state is to be alive, is to be this being of unconditional love. When we are born into this world, that's all we are. We are that agape, as the Greeks call it, unconditional love. That's why the love for a child is unconditional. We're born into that. It's through our conditioning and our development that we lose that as our primary signal. So it's time to tap back into that. And that takes finding this lover energy again, this wild man, this man of passion, the man who has a calling that sees the bigness and the brightness of the world and wants to amplify that and protect that. That's what an awakened man is. That's what the divine masculine is. That's what just being a man is. It's your birthright. It's what you're born into. And again, we are that generation that's changing the shaping of that, the rite of passage of that, the importance of that transition. I read recently that millennial men spend three times as much time with their children than the previous generation. 3 times as much. And it's true. I believe it, and myself included, where being home, changing diapers, being up at nights, working from home, being able to take and get involved in sports more. And this isn't a knock on the previous generation, but it is to say that it's important that this has happened. There of course is the extreme of that with helicopter parenting and just what we're putting in children these days. I don't even want to open up that can of worms right now, but we have to remember that our children are what we need to develop in the most healthy way. And in order to do that, we have to do our own work. At IgKnight, we say it ran in my family till it ran into me. You're the chain breaker. You're the one that's going to do something different. And the thing about having awareness around these things, once you have awareness, now you have responsibility. Because if you have awareness and then don't do anything about it, well, then that's on you. We had a man in our group once who gave this great metaphor where it's like, it's not even a metaphor, it's real. When you walk by a piece of trash on the ground, you're either one of three men. You're either the man that sees it and walks by, sees it and picks it up, or you're the one that put it there. Which one are you? And I know I've definitely been the one that sees it and walks by, and I definitely have made a conscious effort to bring that into my life, to do the little things, because those little things add up to big things. And mostly it shapes how I see the world. And when I choose to see it from this growth-oriented place, where we're breaking out of our comfort zone. We're continually bringing ourselves further. I see grit. I see passion. I see work ethic. I see building something. I see constructive energy as opposed to destructive energy in the world. And that's not playing a blind eye to what's fucked up in the world. But I realize, like, how much do I consume of that and how much do I allow that to be the dominant pictures and images? Because remember, the subconscious works with pictures, images, sounds, feelings. So you have to remember to bring that forward where you can be aware of that and start to work with that energy. So I want to start to bring it into a close here, just reminding us that this episode around David Goggins and comfort being the enemy, and seeing how that man has conquered feats of his physiology and what his body can do, that it obliterates any story I can tell myself about what I can and can't do. I ran one marathon so far in my life, and I remember during the training, the training was actually the hardest part, but, on these runs, even on like the smaller runs, when I was like, okay, I have a 5 mile run. And if it was just in my head, like, as soon as I get to 5 miles, I'm done. It's like, that's what would happen. 5 miles, my body was, or anytime doubt crept in on a long run. And then it's just like my legs would feel like they weighed 1,000 pounds. The mind will give out way before that body does. Hear that again. Your mind, your focus will give out and quit way before your body can quit or will quit. You've seen that in every type of athletic pursuit, world records, feats that had never been done before, and what it took. And often it was mind over matter, the mental game. It's why top athletes in the world all have psychologists, all have coaches, all have therapists, all have body workers, because they know this. And for you to be a man of substance, you have to take responsibility for having the awareness, for tuning this part of you, for continually setting higher and higher expectations of yourself and those around you, raising your standard, for refining your vision and focusing on your mission 1% every day, bringing yourself out of your comfort zone, not allowing yourself to be comfortable for too long. And you're going to create amazing things in the world. You're going to experience a life that you never thought possible. The last thing I'll say is write it down. We're finding out now with ChatGPT, which I love, that 80% of what we take in from that, we forget, because it's just spoon fed to us in this beautiful way. Bring pen to paper again. Work that muscle, work that nervous system, ingrain it, repeat it, build on it. Listen to some David Goggins on YouTube. So I hope this was helpful for you men out there listening, and maybe feel that Groundhog's Day life happening for you, where you've lived the same day too many days in a row, where you're getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, or you're sick of hearing yourself say the same excuses or make the same promises. Maybe in your relationship, your partner's just sick of hearing the empty promises, knowing that action isn't going to come. Maybe it's something with your health that you need to get checked out. Maybe it's your physical fitness. Maybe it's your morning routines and more meditative yin practices that have gone by the wayside. If you don't take care of yourself now, you're going to be a burden to others later. Said it earlier in the episode. If you don't take care of yourself now, you're going to be a burden to others later. We're here to support you. We're here to love you. We're here to take care of you. If an IgKnight program interests you, reach out to us. Links are always in the comments. Share this episode with someone that can use this energy, that you know is living in this comfort place. Go ahead and subscribe to the IgKnight channel as well. Much love to all of you men out there. I hope